So, psychoanalysis, those who studied the unconscious were really focusing on the psychological causes for mental illness. Joseph Breuer, who was a direct influence on Freud, who created the theory of psychoanalysis, treated a hysteric woman, which is the case of Anna O. Breuer ended up hypnotizing her and getting her to open up more about her traumatic past and her emotions several hours a day for about a year and a half. He used the cathartic method, and that is basically alleviating hysterical symptoms by allowing ideas that cause physical disorders to be expressed consciously. Later on, though, Anna O started referring to Breuer as her father, which is then called the transference. And the transference is a patient's response to the therapist as if the therapist was a relevant person in the patient's life. And then not soon after that, Breuer started having emotional feelings for Anna, which is then called the countertransference. And that is basically when the therapist becomes emotionally involved with the patient. Freud gave a lot of his credit of creating psychoanalysis to Breuer for his case with Anna O. So Freud's psychoanalytic theory of personality explains personality in terms of early experiences, unconscious motives, and conflicts, and how people deal with these motives and conflicts. It's hard to test, but people recognize the issues as being real. Freud's structure of personality includes the id, ego, and superego. So the id is the instinctive component. It operates to the pleasure principle, which is basically you do things that make you happy and you don't do things that obviously don't make you happy. The ego is a decision-making component. It considers social norms and trying to satisfy the id, but it has to balance the id. And then the superego is the moral component. It operates to the internalized social norms and it influences the ego. So the ego basically has to balance between both the id and the superego. There are also levels of awareness. So the conscious level, is what you're currently thinking about. The preconscious is material just beneath the surface, stuff that is easily achieved, but you aren't thinking about it right away. And the unconscious is in the deep in the surface, a lot harder to bring to your attention. Behavior is the outcome of internal conflict. So intropsychic conflict to anxiety to reliance on defense, which are centered around sex and aggression. And some of these defense mechanisms are rationalization, which is creating false but plausible explanations to justify behavior. Regression, which is keeping distressing thoughts and feelings in your unconscious. Projection is attributing one's thoughts and feelings to motives to another. Displacement, which is the diverting emotional feelings from their original source to a substitute target. Reaction is the reaction formation, which is behaving in a way that is exact opposite to one's true feelings. Regression is reversion to immature patterns of behavior. Undoing, which is making restitution for an unacceptable act or thought. And sublimation, which is channeling unacceptable motives into acceptable, even admired social behaviors. Freud is also famous for his psychoanalytic theory and his psychosexual stages. This is how we suggest we develop our personality, I guess, from his point of view. So the oral stage is the birth to the first year where pleasure comes from their mouth. Obviously, babies are always sticking whatever they can get in their hands into their mouths. 2 to 3 years of age is the anal stage. 4 to 5 is the phallic stage, where pleasure comes from the genitals. 6 to 12 is the latency stage, where erotic pleasure is suppressed. And then finally, the genital stage is puberty on, where the sexual urges reappear and you focus on others instead of yourself.